Let's do this! So let's talk about the Pokemon generations. After 20 years, we've got a total of 7 generations in the main series. So today, we'll be going from worst to best on the Pokemon generations. You got it, give me that hate, baby.
You're just doing this to clickbait.
Huh? What? Who said that?
It is I, your new co-host, Kamen.
Great, more characters. So, what was that thing about clickbait?
You're gonna be listing off Pokemon generations from worst to best, right?
Well, these kind of lists are bound to happen. After all, they are opinions.
You should know better than that. Even if you play the opinion card, you don't explain why, you're gonna get hounded.
Good thing I'm critiquing the generations on 3 very specific criteria: presentation, gameplay, and the roster of Pokemon.
You're still gonna get smacked for this, you know.
It's the internet, of course I will. So, without further ado, let's begin!
Bring on the hate comments! Yay! Bisharp, are you insane?
What do you mean by that?
I mean that!
I regret nothing. So, let me start by saying this. I do love all the generations of Pokemon, but if I had to say which one was the weakest, it would have to be the first one. Now, if you've been paying attention to my Manga Kamen channel, I will be having a video on this matter soon on that. But let me give you the long and short of it. The fact you can't move fast at all, the fact the special stat was so broken, the original sprites in red and blue weren't my favorite images of the iconic monsters, and Snake! The roster of Pokemon, the original 151, I'm not gonna lie, some of my favorite Pokemon are from this listing. Blastoise, Scyther, Onix. It was a solid roster, but unfortunately not all the Pokemon had the greatest moves they could naturally learn. And even though there were TMs, yes, they were good to give your Mon some coverage, but unless you took advantage of glitches, you'd be stuck with a single use for each TM. Oh yeah, the only thing you can basically do in the post-game as well is just catch Mewtwo. Not really the best post-game out there. While the first gen did start everything, I have to admit, it hasn't aged well. At all. And frankly, Nintendo, next time you release these games, please put the option to speed up the games. Please, just like in Pokemon Stadium. I'm gonna be honest, I actually do appreciate these games. They brought the main line into the world of 3D, they introduced new type fairies, and brought a couple of interesting battles like Sky Battles, but the generation wasn't the strongest to me. In terms of look, Generation 6 is beautiful, and I'm not the hugest fan of the chibi art style. But what really got me was the fact I was able to beat the games in a single day. The X and Y games were ridiculously easy, especially with everything that the games were willing to give you, like the experience share, the Torchic, and a lot of other things. In addition, they debuted the smallest number of new Pokemon in a generation, and no, I'm not counting Mega Evolutions for this. They aren't new Pokemon, but rather new forms of a Pokemon in my eyes. There's also the abysmal lack of a post-game where you can do just 1 or 2 quests before you're forced to keep challenging the Elite Four again and again and again and ugh. The games aren't bad, not by a long shot, but with a real easy set of games and a rather dull story with a small roster, I had to put Gen 6 up for its namesake.
You seriously are trying to annoy people now, aren't you?
Pretty much, yeah. Despite the fact this generation brought a lot to the table, heck, it brought us Cynthia, the physical special split for Tax. Generation 4 had a few issues with their initial run with Diamond and Pearl. First, there was the story. While I like Cyrus as a villain, especially if you read the Diamond and Pearl manga with Hariyata as the main character, since in that, Cyrus is a monster downright. But the story in the games was stuff we'd seen before a million times. Cyrus becoming the ruler of space and time, like we haven't heard that before. Secondly, there were the Pokemon in the roster. A number of the newer Pokemon were Pokemon you couldn't get due to them either being evolutions or baby forms of already existing Pokemon and couldn't be obtained until after the main adventure. There was also a lack of Fire-type Pokemon in the original 2 games. If you didn't choose Chimchar, you were basically stuck using Ponyta and Rapidash as your main fire monster. Luckily, Platinum came into play and fixed the issue and expanded the roster quite a bit. This is also the generation that allowed you to trade over the internet with the Nintendo Wi-Fi connection, and sure, that's been shut down, but it still made wanting to trade with other people a lot easier. In addition, I have to say, the fact that there was a bit of 3-dimensional rendering of the overworld made the character sprites stand out a bit more and made the world seem more alive. Oh my god, those graphics.
Bisharp, you're drooling.
No, I'm not! You're blind! Yeah, I know, Generation 7 is in the middle of the list for me. Not that it's a bad game again, I just think there are other generations that brought a bit more to the table, but that isn't to say that Sun and Moon aren't bad. The fact is, I think these games are absolutely beautiful, and how they break the formula from the original games. Gym battles and HMs are a thing of the past, and after playing Sun and Moon, I can only see bringing those back as a regression. Makes me wonder what they're going to do for the Sinnoh remake. You all know it's coming! The story and characters of the game are all fun and memorable, and the post-game with the Ultra Beast certainly does draw the player into the mystery of the alien creatures. And can I say I love the idea of regional forms that Sun and Moon introduced? I really hope that Game Freak will incorporate it in future generations and do that with the Sinnoh remakes too. All in all, while Sun and Moon are excellent games, I feel that other generations just brought more to the table. Speaking of warmer regions, going back to the days of the Game Boy Advance, we're going to Hoenn, and...
So, you think these games are better than Sun and Moon, huh?
well, Generation 3 did bring a lot more to the table in comparison, so...
Bisharp? Bisharp! No! Are you okay? Oh well, my show now. So, Generation 3, it brought a lot. And when I say a lot, it brought a lot, like creative Pokemon, and brought us the Mythos. But mechanically wise, the games brought a few new features to the table. Pokemon abilities, which added to the whole battling scene and adding a new level of strategy when coming up with your team. In addition, the music was amazing, with a lot of synths that scored the adventure. You also had 2 different teams depending on the version you picked up, and this is something that only Gen 3 games and their remakes can lay claim to, which did slight changes but still made it so you could buy both versions of the game and not get the same experience as the other. But these games aren't without their faults. The diving mechanics are a bit tacked on, as well as serving back and forth can be quite tedious. And once again, the thing that really holds these games back is just the post-game. In Ruby and Sapphire, there's a real lack of it. However, I will admit that Emerald did fix this, with the Battle Frontier, which did give a spin to battling.
Ugh, that hit me.
Your own ego?
Hush you. If you ever need an example to prove that Pokemon wasn't a one-time fluke, Gold and Silver are the names set in stone for that. Not only were these the games that introduced the new batch of Pokemon over the original 151, and rather than just retread familiar ground, Gold and Silver created more challenges, made the battles more complex, and added to the adventure. With Steel and Dark types adding to a bit of balance to the battling, as well as adding held items could change the outcome of a battle. Not to mention, these have got to be some of the longest Pokemon games out there, something that were in the remakes as well. You get to go to a full-on another region, something that hasn't happened in any new games. These have got to be some of the best post-games the series has ever seen. It's kind of a shame that no one else has actually done this in the games. And there was a legacy with these games. They served as a direct sequel to the original ones, with more addition to Team Rocket, even facing off against the original player character from the games that came before. So, what can top this? Well, process of elimination, I think that's obvious. Yup.
Of course!
Generation 5! Let's start with the fact that this has got to be the best generation in my opinion. One of the factors is the huge roster of Pokemon. Over 150 Pokemon in the roster's name, and sure, a number of the mons met with controversy. And sure, I may not agree with that, but you have to admit they at least came with a lot of variety in them. Give me ice cream and trash bags over seals and piles of sludge any day. But these games are also some of the most creative as well. For example, giving hidden abilities, triple and rotation battles being introduced, having seasons in the game, something that hasn't been done since. And I think it should be mentioned that there are fully animated battle sprites for the Pokemon, front and back. Trading has been now upgraded so you can grade from your PC, and many more other features. For some of the more interesting additions come from the story in the game, which unlike other generations had a continuous story between the first 2 games and the sequels. And you were also able to change the difficulty of the games. Yes, you needed to unlock them, but there's still something that you can do to make the games a bit more challenging. Something that players have wanted for ages and still want. And it should have been included into the newer games too. While it hasn't been as big a departure from the series like Sun and Moon, it still broke the mold in several manners. For example, creating a whole new region where Pokemon from previous generations couldn't be caught in the main game, and once again, the direct sequels instead of a third version. The games certainly have their ups and downs. Like I said before, that you need to unlock the difficulty modes, and while I personally did like how there were a whole new roster of Pokemon to work with, I can understand why people wouldn't care for how you couldn't get some Pokemon in the original 2 games. But hey, that's just me. And I think Generation 5 is the best. Let me know what you guys think down below in the comments section, and if you liked the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more content.
And if you want to see more of me, be sure to let us know as well.
Hush you.